Hi, it's Simon Mannering from WeFirst, and I'm here with Leland Maschmeyer from Chobani, the Chief Creative Officer there, and I thought I'd ask him a few questions about purpose and how it builds Chobani's business, and really how it inspires both their employees and their consumers to build the brand with them. So thanks for some time, Leland.
Yeah, thank you.
So how would you define Chobani's purpose, and why is it so important to the brand?
Well, our purpose is very simply the idea that we're trying to bring better food to more people.
Right.
This was something that came out of Hamdi's ambition way before he bought his first yogurt factory to produce it. And I think it's one of the things that's really differentiated us in the category, because we've been able to really focus on and challenge a lot of the production traditions on making food. It was a very simple idea of how do you take something that's natural and pure and unviolated from its natural state and still put it in a cup and have it on shelf so consumers of whatever socioeconomic class can enjoy it.
Right, right. And did you find that by being clearer and more articulate about your purpose, that gave you a competitive advantage in terms of the fight for shelf space and awareness and company growth?
Yeah, no question. I mean, everyone is fully aware that most of society is moving towards a wellness stance, whether that's proactive wellness or reactive wellness, whether that's through athletics and fitness or just eating and spiritual well-being.
Right.
And so everyone wants a brand that's part of that. So whenever it was something that allowed us to strike up a relationship with a retailer, it was always a proof point to show that we were on the right side of a trend, and then therefore it made us attractive because it shone a little bit of a light on the retailer. It gave the retailer a chance to use our equity for their benefit. But at the same time, internally, it allows us to make decisions on very day-to-day tactical choices. I mean, because like lots of times you'll look at data on a decision, and the data will say one thing, and then people in the company will say another thing, and then it's like, well, what's the tiebreaker? It's like, well, what's our purpose? And that should always be the tiebreaker if you're at a point of indecisiveness.
That's such a powerful point. You know, purpose is not only powerful in terms of making the positive decisions or the proactive decisions, it's about what not to do.
Yeah.
And so your compass is you've got all these choices on a daily basis. And the other point you made is so important, which is people think that purpose is really self-serving exclusively, but it's not. When you look to retailers, when you look to partners, they want to mitigate the risk that they're going to be accused of cause washing, greenwashing, purpose washing, or irresponsible practices by working with brands that have that values alignment, that have the integrity, that have that transparency. So from a storytelling point of view, how do you establish the credibility, the integrity of your purpose? Is it about transparency? What do you do to tell that story?
Yeah, it's a lot of different things. I really believe in this idea of actions over advertising, and that your actions should be your advertising. And I think that's one of the things that's made Chobani really powerful, is not only is this language on our site, but we are living that action or that belief through how we pay and take care of people within our company and in our factories, how we have taken a very active stance in trying to take care of and hire refugees within the United States, how we are working very closely with our farmers and stuff to ensure animal welfare, how we're implementing sustainable practices into our company. We really focus very hard on trying to make sure that we're not purpose washing ourselves, but instead we are living it at every square inch, every square millimeter of the company that we can.
And what informs those decisions? Because a lot of companies are rising to the challenge of being purposeful, but they do it in a more generic or broader sense, where they'll say, well, here's an articulation of our purpose and we want to support a cause. But how did you get specific about what issues you'd advocate for? Specific things that you do for your employees, why refugees is an issue? Was there a credo? Is there a set of values that inform those decisions? Like, what's your compass to bring it to life on the activation side?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that's something that as an organization we've done a good job about elevating issues that we care about and having a very robust conversation internally about what is the exact stance that we want to take on them, so that we know where we stand on a robust set of issues. And of course there's always new ones that come up that allow us to think about how we can diversify our stance on a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, being very aware of how our purpose touches a lot of other issues in the world is absolutely critical to ensuring that we know how to engage the world in something that is not always about us.
Right, and that's a really important point. And in WeFirst vernacular, we say you need to be the celebrant rather than celebrity of your community. Obviously you embrace that, but how do you keep yourself on track with that, because there's so many pressures to be self-directed and self-focused inside companies. You've got quarterly, analyst projections to hit, you've got analyst calls, you've got this, you've got that. What do you do to make sure that you stay off yourself and onto your community and onto your values and impact?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. That's a constant tension that any company faces, right. And I think that's really on the responsibility of the executive leadership, on myself, right. On our CMO, on our founder Hamdi, yep. And stuff, to always pull the company out of its day-to-day every once in a while, mm-hmm. And re-inspire us, reimagine, reassert.
How often do you do that? Is it at town hall meetings? Is it sort of vlogging by senior leadership? How do you kind of?
Yeah, certainly we definitely do it in any of the big town hall meetings or any right. type of the summits that we have within the company. Mm-hmm. But I personally also do it in day-to-day interactions, right. As much as I can, because again, the problems that you focus on, the more you focus on them, become the world. Like right. it just becomes the only problem in the world. Right. And so anytime we have a real challenge that we're trying to get over, it's easy to get lost in that problem and just trying to solve that problem to solve the problem.
Right.
So I try to always recontextualize the problem in terms of our purpose, yep. Just in day-to-day working conversations, so that it is influencing as much of those micro level decisions as possible, and it's being ingrained within the organization, and the organization is being reminded of it.
Yeah, you have to constantly ring that same bell, so it remains the priority, it remains top of mind. I mean, so beyond actually reminding people on a consistent basis, what else do you do to foster a purposeful culture internally? You obviously support your employees and support issues that you care about, but it's so human, all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. How do you unlock the full humanity of your employees, and how do you inspire them to feel like they're co-creating that commitment? Like, what do you do internally that you think is maybe a little bit of the special sauce at Chobani?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question, because I do think that's super important, in the sense that you're nothing without your employees, right? They have to buy into it. They have to feel that their actions are contributing to that purpose. So, right. And I'm only going to speak for myself on this one as opposed to the whole company.
Right.
But one of the things that I really try to do is not only make sure that everyone is aware of that purpose, but I try to contextualize what each individual person's doing that helps the company launch further into that purpose.
So they know they've got a role to play.
Yeah, so they know they have a meaningful role. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I really try to respect their autonomy.
Right. Okay.
So like I say, look, this is what you're tasked with doing. I am here for you. I will step in difficult situations. I will be a mentor. I will be a workhorse for you. I will be whatever you need me to be, so that you can achieve the task that you've been challenged with in pursuit of this company purpose. And some people use me, some people don't, but I think, one, there's that confidence that I am respecting their talent and what they bring.
But they're supported at the same time.
And that they're supported, and at the end of the day, what they feel like is that they are the ones making the bricks that build the building of our purpose, that their fingerprint, they can see their work.
And do you recognize them for that? Like, how do you reflect back to them the fact that they're seen, they're recognized, they're rewarded for doing so? Because otherwise they may do it once, but they won't do it again.
Yeah, well, there's a few things. One is I just very simply say thank you. I mean,
powerful stuff, right? Shocking proposition.
But I've actually gotten feedback from some of my team that, many of them who are new, they just haven't had bosses in the past that have said something as simple as, thank you, I really loved what you did, or I really appreciated what you did.
I mean, it's so simple, but it really does, like, we all look for recognition, to be seen, to be heard inside a company. One of the challenges right now is, disingenuously or not, more companies are becoming purposeful, outright. What happens when everyone either says they are purposeful or are in fact purposeful? What happens in your category, in the health and wellness and food category, if that becomes table stakes? How does a brand like yours, a leader in its category, stay ahead? And how do you think to allow yourself to stay ahead?
Yeah, interesting question. So I think there's two aspects to that. There's one is, well, what happens when everyone's purposeful? Does purposeful just become a commodity that no one cares about?
Right.
The other question is, how do you stay ahead as a purposeful brand and keep innovating? So to that first question, certainly every company is going to try to create their own purpose, and they may even riff off one of their competitors' purposes.
Right.
But much like when you meet a inauthentic, disingenuine, fake person in real life, like, you kind of know.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of know, because they're not operating from within inside. and
You
not
talk to them and you turn and you say something under your
Yeah.
breath and you walk away.
So I think in many cases companies are a lot like people in that when a consumer or people, the public, meet these companies,
Right.
you can kind of very quickly tell like who's speaking from the heart and
Right.
who's doing heavily scrubbed
Speaking from the other
corporate
end.
language
Yeah,
that
right.
sounds like purpose.
Right, right.
So I think it's less in who has a purpose and who doesn't, but who is executing with genuineness and authenticity towards that
Right,
purpose. And I
right.
think that's easy for consumers to figure out. The second question of how do you stay ahead?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, in the late 90s and early 2000s, innovation was the big word, and
Right.
innovation consultancies blew up, and it was all around product innovation, and then it was around digital innovation.
Right.
I actually think we are on the very early cusp of a CSR innovation. Like, how do you as a company constantly innovate the different ways that you can contribute to the world beyond just your product? And that to me is really interesting when you start, like particularly what we were talking about with Patagonia. How do you take care of the whole family?
Yeah.
Well, that seems like a no-duh thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously employee retention and stuff, but that in itself and those programs designed towards that is an innovation that has business return on it.
Right.
It just falls under the bucket of CSR
Right.
rather than consumer products.
And do you think we'll see the day when even foundation work, let alone sustainability or corporate citizenship work, will effectively dissolve and just be an expression of the core values of a company? And really, this will be the way of being of corporate entities, good or bad, throughout the country. Do you think we're headed towards that, where it's all about bringing the values of a company to life comprehensively and innovating in that context?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all innovations end up becoming table
Yeah,
stakes at
right.
some point,
Yeah.
because if they're successful enough, everybody will want to do it.
Right.
And then we're on to the next thing. And at the end of the day, truthfully, if every company adopts a very strong purpose-led culture with strong CSR that is contributing to the world, that would be awesome if it's all table stakes. I mean,
And-
that ultimately should be what companies are about, which is making their communities better, as opposed to the more traditional perspective of what companies are about, which is providing sustainable employment for communities.
And only serving their duty to their shareholders and nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to give, so many people, so many brands, so many entrepreneurs aspire towards the Chobani brand. If there were three things that you could tell them, either a cautionary tale, a directive to follow, or something to consider with a view to the future, what would you say? What are three insights you and your unique position have there that you might want to share with others?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think actually Hamdi, our founder, would be the best person to answer that. So
Right.
I will humbly answer that as the
Defer
person
to
who
him.
didn't start the company.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is, so much of what you're talking about, I absolutely think is so critical. Being able to distill your purpose down very clearly, because as you scale a company, which I've scaled a smaller brand consultancy, so I have gone through some version of this.
Yeah.
There will be so many moments and people and challenges that are going to cause you to compromise
Right.
why you started the company in the name of securing a retailer, in the name of scale, in the
Right.
name of profit efficiency, in the name
Payroll.
of investment, in the name of payroll.
Yeah.
And you have to have a set of conviction of what your foundational principles are that you can't break. And if you break those, you're not the same company anymore. So why are you scaling a company that you never wanted to be and that you never founded?
Right.
I think that's one big one.
Right.
The second big one is the most valuable thing that you can build into your operating system of your organization is not efficiency. It's flexibility.
Flexibility. Okay.
You should sacrifice efficiency in the name of flexibility. Your company will change so many times over the first 10 to 20 years, if you're lucky enough to exist for 20 years.
Right.
And the business environment that you will exist in will change so much within the year that the second you focus on building efficiency, you're building fragility.
Right.
And when the context changes for which you've designed your company for, your company will crack and break or slow down and not be able to respond.
Yep.
So you should be comfortable and you should design into your company structure flexibility, how to maintain that flexibility, and willing to pay the premium for flexibility, which is sacrificing cost, which is sacrificing some profit, so that you can play longer
Right.
and more intelligently the game of growing a business.
And maintain relevance if you're a vendor to your clients or to your consumer if you're you're in a product or a CPG company.
And I think the last one is,
Yeah.
since you gave me three,
Yeah,
I gave you three.
absolutely.
And maybe I'm a little biased on this one because I'm a designer, but
Right.
I really don't ever underestimate the power of design And I mean that both from a formal, visual, industrial aspect, but
Yep.
also a narrative aspect.
Sure.
Of a way to increase the perceived value of your company,
Right.
and really set it apart. So much of early business is about just making the business work.
Right.
But a business can't work if the product that you're putting out to the world isn't beautiful and alluring and fits into people's lives, or whoever your buyer is. And design is that Velcro that helps connect it to people's hearts, their minds, and their lives.
Right.
So, so much inside your business is going to change as you're working on it. That design part, if you can get that right and really capture people's attention, that will keep the attention, that will hopefully keep the purchasing activity focused on your company,
Right.
while you're swirling on the inside trying
Yeah.
to still figure out the business mechanics, distribution, and manufacturing of your product.
I know, it makes so much sense. There's a direct through line between design allowing you to create a story that people are going to connect with, and the role that purpose plays in that story being meaningful and relevant to their lives. And when you design it the right way to have a compelling story to tell that is purposeful and therefore relevant and meaningful,
Yeah.
so much falls into place.
So there's this really interesting study, which I'll, if I can find it again, I'll send it to you after this, of these researchers who studied the economic impact of stories on commodity goods. And so what they did was they took a chewed on pencil, a stapler, and these just everyday objects that if you saw them lying on the street, you would never pick them up, or you
Right.
probably would never even notice them.
Sure.
They listed each of them individually on eBay, set a price of a penny,
Mm-hmm.
gave no description of them other than a pencil,
Right.
a stapler, see if they would sell.
Right.
And as you would expect, nobody bid on them, no one got them.
Yeah.
The auction ended.
Right.
Same pencil, same stapler, same objects were listed. But now they included a description
Okay.
underneath it
You could
of
only
the
imagine.
story.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like for instance, I think the pencil was the story, and they were all fabricated stories.
Right.
But the pencil was this was the pencil that JFK chewed upon while he was debating what to do with the Bay of Pigs.
Sure.
Imagine what that sold for at auction.
Right.
It
Right.
was. I remember the number. I loosely remember the percentage increase in price value. It went up by like something like 1,500%
Right.
in price, and there were a lot of people bidding on it. And the only difference was a narrative that gave it perceived value.
Yeah, and you know that we live at a time right now where marketing is so compelling and so exciting, because that narrative not only make us more meaningful outright, but it can inspire individual companies like Chobani and the private sector at large to leverage those narratives to enlist all of their stakeholder communities to make a difference out
Yeah.
there at a time when we need to do it more than ever. And you know, on a personal note, been a huge fan of Chobani for so long and their leadership, and I know that they'll continue. And thank you for sharing some of the insights, because all of us out there are trying to emulate brands like yours, and you know, hopefully some of these insights will prove valuable to those who are watching today. So thanks so much, Leland.
Yeah, thank you.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
man.